I know I just posted yesterday, but I woke up this morning and this just flowed out of me. It's a bit long, but I hope you enjoy it. Also thanks for 300 plus subs. A lot has changed in the last 3 months. Especially me. Before, I was selfish and stubborn. It all changed when I saw the boy with the bright orange hair. At first he was just a spirit that only me and my mom could see. He had been in a traffic accident that caused head trauma. I'm still not too sure how to explain this part, but his spirit detached itself from his body. An out-of-body experience is the closest way I can think to describe it. Anyway, one day at practice, I play volleyball by the way. He just showed up. At first I wasn't sure if I was seeing him or not. So I ignored him and continued to practice. After 3 weeks though, I knew. It had been a while since I let a spirit distract me. I did my best to ignore them when they came to my mom for help. But something about him drew me in. I tried to deny it, but I was fooling no one. My mom told me to bring him to her. She wanted to help him. That was the difference between us. She loved being a seer. I despised it. I told you from the beginning that I was selfish and stubborn. And while I'm still those things, now it's for a different reason. For a better reason. For him. Anyway, I took him to my mom and they talked. She offered to help him get back to his body. Thing was, he couldn't just go back because he wanted to. He was in a coma and his body and mind needed to heal. But it wasn't a hopeless situation. There was a way he could help. Spirits have powers that can be used to help them move forward on whatever path is right for them. Somehow I got roped into helping. That was a joke. I knew from the moment he smiled when my mom offered to help him that I would be right there beside her. I started my seer training. I learned about all the things I was capable of, and used everything she taught me to help him. During that time I had finally let go of the cynical and negative feeling I had about myself. I even stopped wearing my contacts. They were just another way I was hiding from myself. Right around the time we started getting better at using our skills, he was transferred to a medical research center the next town over. It was about a month before I saw him again. I walked into the gym and there he was. He still hadn't gotten his memory back completely, but he was there. Standing right in front of me. All I had to do was reach out and touch him. That evening we sat at the park and I told him part of what had happened between us when he was a spirit. Thankfully he believed me. While we were walking home our hands touched. It was the first time I had physically touched him. Things only got better from there. Our families met and we finally became an official couple. He ended up joining the volleyball team and we spent every day together. I continued training and helping my mom. His love for volleyball grew and so did my love for him. At first the team always complained about me dragging him off after practice. They wanted to get to know him better and bond as a team. But after being apart for so long, I wanted him all to myself. Now he's laying next to me watching a movie. I have no idea what's happening though. All my focus is on the boy with the bright orange hair. Shoyo. His eyes sparkle against the light of the TV. He's been staring at me for the last 10 minutes. A small smile on his face. I'm pretending not to notice. I may not be the mind reader in this relationship, but I know what he's thinking. Every once in a while he gets this far away look on his face. I know he's remembering the beginning of us. The first time I noticed it I joked that unlike him I couldn't read minds, so he'd have to actually tell me what he was thinking. He was reluctant at first. He kept saying he just liked looking at me. Finally, after buttering him up with his favorite sweets, he told me. From then on I recognized the look. I lace our fingers together and kiss him on the cheek. He responds with a kiss on my forehead. I smile and snuggle into him. I never knew my heart could feel this full. He clicks the TV off and I pretend to protest. We both knew neither of us was watching that movie. However, someone else was. Tadashi, Kei's best friend, let out a frustrated grunt. He got up and waved goodbye. I called sorry to him as he closed the door. Kei snickered. He whispered, "Oops." I struggled not to laugh. Poor Tadashi. I always feel so bad when me and Kei get so wrapped up in each other that we forget he's there. His girlfriend should be home by now though, so I'm sure he'll be okay. 5 years later. Shoyo. We are sitting in the dressing room with Tadashi. He's going over his vows for the nth time. Kei stands and walks over to him. He puts his hands on Tadashi's shoulders. Closing his eyes, he takes a deep breath. Slowly Tadashi starts to calm down. The tense expression on his face now gone. Kei, now a fully fledged seer, has just used a power called flooding. Normally he doesn't use his powers without a person's knowledge, but Tadashi was way too tense to even hear Kei asking him. With Tadashi finally calm, Kei released him and came back to sit beside me. Tadashi nodded a thanks to him. Kei nodded back. I took this chance to excuse myself to go to the restroom. Kei. As I watched Tadashi fix himself in the mirror, I thought about the ring I had given to my mom to hide for me. I wanted to do it 6 months ago, but Tadashi proposed to his girlfriend first and I didn't want to steal his moment. I was put on best man duty and Shoyo has to travel for work. So the timing ended up working out anyway. I already asked Tadashi to be my best man, much to the dismay of Aki, my brother. 3 more months of waiting and he'll be mine forever. 4 months later. Kei. I'm going over the wedding plans with Aki, Tadashi and Natsu. We're discussing the music for the reception. Kei. I stop what I'm doing. Kei. My blood goes ice cold. Please. I hope you can hear me. I block out the noise around me and focus. Nothing. I know I heard him though. I grab my phone and dial his number. It rings way past the amount of time it usually takes for him to answer. I hang up and call his mom. Same thing. I look at Natsu and she immediately knows. Natsu lets Aki and Tadashi in on the situation as I call Shoyo's phone again. Tohoku Kusai Hospital. I hear it right as the phone clicks to his voicemail. I search my phone for directions. We're already in the car when my phone locates it. I put the address into the GPS and we leave. The closer we got, the stronger his aura felt. I knew his exact location as we entered the building. We rush past doctors and nurses. Other patients and visitors make a way for us. Getting sleepy. We turn the last corner and see his mom talking to the doctor. We race over to them. She looks tired and scared. I try to calm myself as I reach for his door handle. I am immediately floored. He's standing beside the bed looking down at himself. He looks at me and smiles. You heard me. I walk over and touched his hand. The fractured images of what happened play in my head. He fell and hit his head trying to hang up what looked like a banner. I hear everyone else come into the room as I move my hand away. I relayed what I saw to the rest of the room. His mom and sister started to cry. When Shoyo was first released from the hospital, they told us that another severe head injury would not have a good chance at recovery. I looked up at him and that's when I noticed it. He wasn't solid like before. Not completely anyway. I called my mom and explained. She used sensory location coupled with astro projection to find us, projecting her image into the room. She looked at Shoyo. She held out her hand to him. He took it. She asked him if he remembered learning about possession. He nodded. He let go of her hand and went back to his body. Closing his eyes, he placed his hands on his arm. After a couple minutes he began to disappear. I got nervous and looked at my mom. She was smiling. The place where Shoyo had touched his arm glowed for a few seconds. His fingers twitched and I released my breath. He needs to rest, but he should be okay by tomorrow. I looked at her questioningly. What does she mean, should? The rest is up to Shoyo. Then she was gone. His mom looked at me with a determined look on her face. Shoyo is a fighter. We all know that. Shoyo. Everything was black. I was in this void of nothingness. I could hear what sounded like voices though. Following the sound I came to a door. Right before I opened it, I felt this strong urge to run. This wasn't my door. I slowly backed away. What are you doing here, sweetie? I turned to see the old lady from before. She was in the room next to mine when I first got to the hospital. She floated over to me. "This isn't where you belong. Follow me." It felt like we weren't making any progress. The void just went on and on. Soon though, we came to a door. She opened it and we were in a meadow. Beautiful flowers surrounded us. A calming feeling came over me then. "Sorry, sweetie, but this is no time to stop and smell the roses. You're on the clock this time." I must have looked confused because she began to explain as we walked along. "Let's just say you're on a visitor's pass and I'm your guide." We went through an archway that led to a river. She pointed to a boat on the shoreline. "You must hurry if you want to get back. Just follow the river and whatever you do, don't stop. There will be creatures disguised as friendly animals, but do not be fooled. They are not there to help you. They are there to tempt you to stay." I nodded my head and got into the boat. She gave it a push and I was in the water. Thankfully the river was faster than it looked. Before long I started to see deer nibbling at the grass along the riverbed. One leaned forward. It wanted me to pet him. The old woman's words swam across my head. I kept my eyes forward and my hands clasped in my lap. The river began to move faster. As much as I wanted to hold on to the side of the boat, I didn't. Who knows what friendly creature was hiding in the water below. The boat slowed to a stop and I was in front of what seemed to be the same meadow. The old lady was sitting on a bench I hadn't noticed before. She waved me over. My instinct was to go to her, but then once again her words swam across my head. I picked up the oar that had been laying on the floor of the boat. I used it to push away from the shore just as she had done. The boat started to move again. It passed under a bridge and stopped once again. I held the oar defensively. After nothing happened I tried to push away again, but the boat didn't move. I looked around me and there in the middle of a field was a door. It had a clock hanging for it. The seconds ticked down. 60 seconds. On the clock. This must be what she meant. 47 seconds. I jumped from the boat and ran as fast as I could. 25 seconds. I reached the door and turned the handle with 1 second to spare. It was mid-afternoon when the machine started beeping. I pressed the button for the nurse. Shoyo's mom and Natsu had just entered from the hall. They had been making calls since yesterday, trying to keep everyone updated. The nurse rushed in and pressed the button to page the doctor. She switched off the alarms and checked his pulse. According to the heart monitor, it seemed to be beating too fast. Like he was running or something. The doctor rushed into the room and checked the machines. He must have concluded what I did because he called for beta blockers. They're used to slow his heart rate, he explained. Finally his heart rate slowed as the beta blockers entered his system. Once he had a steady heartbeat, they put on an oxygen mask to help get his blood flowing at a normal rate. Shoyo. The familiar sound of beeping woke me. The room was dark. I felt around the bed. If I was right about being back in the hospital, the nurse's call button should be somewhere by my hands. My fingers slid over what I assumed was the remote. Based on the buttons, it must have belonged to the TV hanging on the opposite wall. Since I couldn't find the call button, I started pressing buttons on the remote. Finally I hit the right one. The TV turned on. Next was to find the volume button. I found it and turned the TV up as loud as it would go. The patient next door started banging on the wall. My plan was working. Now all I had to do was wait for him to call the nurse to complain. About 2 minutes later the door opened and a nurse rushed to my bed. She smiled at me. I gestured to the remote and she turned off the TV. I heard the man next door yell, "Finally." The nurse chuckled and pressed some buttons at the top of my bed. Next she clicked on the table light. She picked up the room phone and dialed a number from a piece of paper on the bedside table. Within minutes my room door flew open and someone turned on the light. I squinted and looked at the entrance. Everyone had arrived at once. I smiled as they all rushed to me. This time I remembered everyone.